Hi, I'm Chelsea Spears with Farmers National Bank with another episode of Blue Table Talk. But this time around, we're doing things a little differently. I'm going to be the one interviewing our president and CEO, Kevin Helmick. Yeah. Kevin, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's a fun reversal of roles here, and you're a natural, so this is going to be great.
Hey, you are too.
Yeah.
Well, we know we've grown so much in the last year or so, with 65 branches now across Pennsylvania and Ohio. So we really wanted to take a step back and look at where we came from and where we started. So Kevin, can you walk us back to day one of Farmers National Bank?
Yeah, I really do love this part of our story. I mean, being at Farmers as long as I have, let's just say north of 25 years, you really begin to appreciate and ask questions about how did we get here? And it goes back to 1886, and you try to immerse yourself in that time. It's post-Civil War and all the changes happening. There's so much agriculture still in our area. It was heavy agriculture, and the small businesses that were in Canfield and just this part of the Western Reserve. So really interesting. But it was we were founded by 9 initial board members. They raised $500,000 in capital. So they got they offered shares at $100 a piece. So yeah,
and that was a lot back then.
That was a lot back then. Yeah, I mean, if you go back, I think houses were $250 or $300. That you could get a house built for. So really interesting. I have the honor of being our 9th CEO in more than 135 years. And so our first CEO, our first president, Alexander Dixon, was actually a Civil War officer. So thinking about that, he was basically everything. He was a judge, he was a Civil War officer, a teacher, a farmer, as many of those folks were. But just started the bank, capitalized it, and really build it right here, almost where we're sitting today, right here in Canfield, Ohio, which is still our headquarters.
Yeah, here we are, still in 2023.
Exactly.
How did you come to this position? Because you have an interesting story as well.
So after college, I wanted to get into financial planning, and so an opportunity came to me through a small community bank. And I had to pay my dues as a teller first, and it wasn't just any teller. I was a part-time teller hired by a temp agency. So we don't use temp agencies anymore, but back then they weren't real sure if I was going to make it, and fortunately I did. But it was a great experience, and I really, even today, I appreciate everything that our frontline people and some of our back office people, go through every day, fighting the good fight for our customers and our community. So I wouldn't have traded that experience for the world.
And that's something we really value too in our leader and CEO. Yeah. How did the new Farmers come about?
Well, as the story goes, so of the 9 founders, I think 3 or 4 of them were primary farmers, and so I've often teased that they won the name game. They got the name Farmers National Bank, but it wasn't really until 2015 through a merger that we really in earnest did agricultural lending. And now our agricultural lending and banking is such a big part of what we do, but really it was less than 1%, even leading up into the early 2000s. So we didn't do a ton of ag. We were more 1 to 4 family residential. We've always done auto loans the last 40 or 50 years. And we did a lot of commercial business, but the farmers got the naming rights back then in the 1880s.
And we have been around since the 1880s. So there's definitely some quirks in our history. You were telling me about some of them, and a few really stuck out to me. What sticks out to you?
Oh, I love this part. Just reading about some of our history. I tease our senior team that some of these we would have to take probably a month worth of meetings to figure out. There was stories, as the automobile was being invented, what do we do with the hitching posts in front of the bank? Because there were horse and buggy and auto accidents happening. So they had to move the hitching posts around to an alleyway. And there were a number of restaurants actually beneath the Canfield Bank. So it takes me back. There was actually a bank built in the 1840s. It was the Van Heining Banking Company. And it was that building that was purchased by the Farmers founders. And they tore that down a few years later and then rebuilt what we have there. So, and then underneath there has always been a couple of restaurants. There was, I think, an Asian cuisine restaurant. There was one that was named The Spot, which initially was kind of an after church white linen type of
Right.
restaurant, and then it evolved into more of just kind of a hangout. So really unique stories about our bank. And listen, I guess over 135 years, you're bound to have some interesting stories. So I'm not even going to go into the bank robberies where one of the presidents had a firearm, he had a sidearm with him, and they chased him into a swamp locally.
Almost like the Wild Wild West.
It was the Wild West in Canfield, Ohio.
I love it. It's interesting to hear about. Those are stories we don't hear very
So much
often.
fun. Yeah.
We've talked about some of the fun stories, right? But
Yeah.
do you feel like there was a pivotal moment in Farmers history that really changed the course of the game for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think there probably, if you were doing a blue table, if we could go back in time and interview the previous 8, presidents, they would all have something. My pivotal moment happened during the Great Recession, the banking crisis of 08 and 09. And this is really where I tip my hat to my predecessors, to the legacy Farmers presidents and the people that worked here, because their conservative, common sense management allowed us to come through the 08 and the 09 cycle so strong. As a matter of fact, when other banks were having to sell assets and really focus on their asset quality, we went on offense and we bought the trust company, we raised capital, and by the early 2010s, we were off and running thinking about mergers and acquisitions, and indeed have done 7 since 2014-15. So I think that coming through that 08-09 so strong, much different than many of our peers. Many banks didn't make it through that time. Many banks really took a number of steps backwards. Not us, and it was because of that type of management and conservative, common sense management that we really still try to really use today. So that was a really pivotal moment for the industry, but in particular for Farmers National Bank.
And where do you see us going from here?
Yeah, I think the sky's the limit. I mean, I think we're going to, as we always have, be very cautious about growth, be very cautious and opportunistic about M&A. We have done a number of contiguous mergers and acquisitions. We think the Midwest is a great place to do business. Our geography, our capabilities to expand geographically have grown as we have grown. We have a lot of work to do, though, now to fill out our footprint with wealth management and mortgage, and do we have the right branch network, and hiring more of the right people. So we have a lot of good work to be done here over the next year or two. But I think beyond that, I think we have a platform that can really continue to expand and grow, and I'm excited about it.
I am too. And we have 130 some years of rock solid history under us to go off of.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing the history of Farmers National Bank. It's been very interesting hearing.
Yeah.
And this was our episode of the Blue Table Talk. So thank you so much for joining, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.